I am unashamed. What about you?
So welcome to Unashamed. Zach's off being a movie mogul, so he's not with us today. But
Well, don't you have to have more than one movie involvement to be a movie mogul?
well, in our circle, one is enough because none of us have ever done it before. So it makes you a movie mogul.
Well, I'm just saying, it's like you look up after a few years and you're like,
okay, you did that.
How many? Now, what exactly have you worked on? You're like, I got one movie. It's really good. So it's kind of like a Lifetime Achievement Award movie style.
Actually, I think he's actually working on another film idea. I've just heard it through the grapevine. I'm not in that circle, so I don't hear everything and let's use this done. But I think they're actually working on another project. So once he gets two, Jay, was two qualify as a mogul or?
I don't know. I'm reading the definition of mogul right now. An important or powerful person, especially in the motion picture or media industry.
So it doesn't give a number. So you could just it could be a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, one-hit wonder.
You could be a mogul. So recently we had we celebrated the 4th of July, and typically, I think we read it on the podcast. Wasn't it you that read John Adams about the illuminations and guns and all the things?
No, that was me. That was my lesson.
Oh, right. So but we talked about it here.
No, I did a speech at the Faith.
I knew I'd heard that recently, but I couldn't remember
What did we call that day?
Faith, Family, Freedom.
Yeah, Faith, Family, Freedom. I'm not as I said before we got started. I've realized that I can't function properly when my wife and I are not together.
Yeah.
And she's being the good grandma.
She hasn't left you. You mean just together temporarily?
Well, she went to Nashville visiting our kids, and we have two young grandchildren, and she's helping.
Yep.
Our son and daughter. Because when if you have one baby, that's a handful. You have two, real close together. Yeah, you need.
And your daughter-in-law is a nurse, so I guess she's back to work, so they probably need the help, right?
Yeah. So I left my Bible yesterday, my notebooks, which you found, and I'm appreciative for somebody on your staff.
Yeah, the church found it. So you're back to the old tore up one today.
Well, I was really praying.
Does it have Luke?
Yeah, I was praying for Luke to still be attached. And good news.
Good news, we have Luke. He may not be able to venture too far away from Luke, but we got Luke in the house.
I had all these notes and everything. They're gone. And so, yeah, it's been tough. And my dog has gone crazy. And it's been frustrating. So, you have a routine. Phil, you have your routines you do every day. And so I let this dog out 3 times a day, like clockwork, because in the off season, we're all getting ready for duck season, but part of that is the dog, they rest. They rest for 9 months.
Yep. And then they work hard.
And then they work.
Yeah.
And so he's resting. And so this is basically just keeping him from destroying any of my property. He's in a big, nice, luxurious pen. But he gets out 3 times a day. What could go wrong? Well, I let him out. He does the same thing. He takes off running wide open. He does his business. He comes back to the pen. I feed him. Well, I let him out. And he took off running like he was fixed to do his business, and he just went out of sight. And I was like, hey. Long story short, 9 hours later, and now it's nighttime, because he responds to a whistle. I'm way away from my house because someone on the social media apparatus, they have a neighborhood.
Yeah, neighborhood Facebook.
Yeah, they have neighborhood. So somebody put on there a picture of my dog saying, does anybody know whose dog this is? But it was still hard to get the information on, well, where is this?
Yeah.
But I just took off thinking, well, how big is the neighborhood? So I'm blowing this whistle, waking everybody up. If you heard that, Al, that was me.
Yeah, I never heard the downside to city city living.
You never heard the downside or the
Oh,
upside?
you're giving me the downside.
Oh, yeah.
To subdivision living.
No, you know what it was? It was a Proverbs 7 analogy. Because about a mile away, there was my neighbor, who I don't know, had some dogs in a kennel. And one of the females, it was
in heat.
Yep, is in heat.
That's
My dog from a mile away
Yep.
risked life and limb traveling through roads, dodging traffic. And so I was blowing that whistle, and I was so far away that I thought, this dog, nowhere around here. And then I just was stopped at a stop sign, kind of wondering, well, that's it. And here come my dog just running down the middle of the street. And so at that time, I didn't know it was an attraction with this dog. So you would think, I got him in the pen, fed him. I was like, whoa, what a crazy adventure. Then the next night, guess what? The next day, same thing.
Yep.
Soon as but this time,
So
it
the
was only a
dog-
couple hours later, because I just went right up there, because I heard those dogs barking in that kennel. And sure enough, look, it was like I was hunting. I looked up, here he come, right down the middle of the road, just wide open. And I said,
And the dog owner has probably experienced it now, because I'm sure every male dog is coming to his house,
Oh yeah.
right? He's realizing. I'm looking at Proverbs 7.
yeah, I was going to read that, but it's probably better from your Bible, because I'm not even sure I have Proverbs.
So is this the one? Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your kinsman.
Yeah.
They will keep you from the adulteress, from the wayward wife with her seductive words.
Yes. So it's all about, Proverbs 7 is all about wisdom. And
Better a
understanding.
dog than you, Jace.
So it gives us this
With her persuasive words, she led him astray.
and then it's like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer
Stepping in the noose.
right before an arrow pierces his liver. It's a very graphic. It goes on to say her highway is a highway to hell. There's a rock song.
Yeah.
Oh
that
yeah.
came from Proverbs chapter 7.
Leading down to the chambers of
And so I'm watching this dog, because if you're a dog and you're crossing all these streets wide open with one thing on your mind,
Yep.
death is near.
Oh, it's near.
So I gotta break it. I gotta break it up.
I'm glad I'm at the end of the road behind the gate, but I don't see that much.
Well, right. So that's what I've been doing the last 2
But
days.
back in the day, even you out here in the middle of nowhere had to deal with it, because
Yep.
the former Bobo, when he would,
That's right.
take off up the street, he would get whipped by every dog, or maybe he was whipping dogs. I don't know, but
Oh,
he'd
yeah.
come back kind of beat up, and he had been through the ringer.
Dog owners, they go through a lot.
They do.
Oh, I was like, when I finally got him back, I was like, and for what? A dog that you can't have.
She's in a kennel.
She's pinned up. So, frustrated.
Well, the reason I started out with the 4th of July, I didn't know you were going to tell that story, was because our dogs, we have 3 now, and one of them especially, she's not very smart, and
Well, neither is this one.
right, she's just not. She doesn't have a lot going on upstairs. But the worst thing about her, she's sweet, the kids love her, but she has an aversion to any thunder or fireworks. And when I say an aversion, I'm talking about she will tear anything apart around her to get in or out of whatever she's, she tries to get in the house. But she has torn off screens. You ought to see in the doorpost inside the little area they try to keep her in. She's chewed it and tore it up. It just looks like
Because around here, which most people say, well, what would that have to do with the 4th of July? But around here, people, they're doing fireworks the day before July 4th, all day.
whatever that period is, they can do it legally. That's what they're doing.
Beginning, on July 4th, it was nonstop.
That's what
from
Jay,
daylight to
We
daylight.
weren't here, but Jay said she went nuts.
They never stop going off into the night. And then the next day, I guess, they're selling all the fireworks at half price now.
Because
I
actually looked it up, the ordinance, you can pop them up till a week after.
Yeah,
holiday.
you're bringing up law, Al. They there's no law because I'm in the middle of the night. I was looking for that dog, and they were fireworks going off at least every 5 minutes.
We hear it, but it's long range. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. We hear that.
Of course, you may be hearing gunfire.
Well, no, if you'd have
Sometimes, a lot of times it's gunfire. The other time it's just, I think it's fireworks. It sounds like it.
Phil famously said, you don't call the law where I'm at. I am the law. Like, by the time they get here, whatever
You
happened,
need to already deal with it.
they're either dead or it's been
It's
settled.
the same with the fire department because we've had it happen before. By the time they get out here, whatever caught on fire is burned to the ground.
It's over.
Anybody who enters my yard to my house, my dogs are trained. Go out there and find out who that is.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to send in things about me bringing this up about the dog because all dogs have issues. We've tried the vest. They've got the like the warm blankets you wrap around a dog. Supposedly that helps them with these high tension. We tried medicines. Nothing works. So I don't know. I'm sure somebody will have some solution. But we tried all the things that are offered for dogs that just can't
maybe the
take-
dog should be transferred to a less combustible
needs to be
area.
in a very quiet environment.
That's it.
Maybe I need to sit it out here, Dad. All your stuff is off in the long booming distances.
Tough to live in the subdivision, in my opinion.
Well,
so
especially if you got an aversion to noise, like Jay said, it's a noisy
Right.
place.
that's right.
So, old friends at Barrel Buddy, Jace, are sponsoring the podcast, and we're kind of getting into that prep for hunting season. We're not quite into gun cleaning mode, but it's just around the corner, right?
Yep. The excitement is building.
It's building. These guys are great. They kind of like a small company came up with a better way to clean your guns, and so mostly we use shotguns, but they also have them from anything from 22 to a 10 gauge. They have a 2-part polymer design. It scrubs and collects particles as it goes through. Then it absorbs all the residue and buffs it clean. So it's a good process. Back in the day, I used to use the patches and the boar snake, but this is much better. The white polymer allows you to see the results. So it's a good product. They're good people. We want you to check them out. BarrelBuddy.com is where you're going to go to check out their products. BARREL Buddy.com. Check them out. All right, so we've been studying the book of Luke. Jace, we're going to depend on your memories today since you have no notes.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have my notes. So
It's Luke chapter 8, I'm telling you. It's
before we get to 8, though, I want to do a little bit of a because there are a couple of verses I wanted to read in our last discussion that I didn't get to. So I want to catch us up in where we've been. I want to do that before we jump into the parable of the sower. In Luke 7, we talked about these people that Jesus was interacting with. The undesirables is what I call them. But they were just people who had, normal life issues. And Jesus was unafraid, to deal with them. And one of them, the last one, of course, was the sinful woman, who we had assumed was the kind of the town prostitute. It seems that way based on what happened. There was also a centurion and then also a widow who had lost a son. But in that section, the last thing we talked about was John the Baptist. And I got to think about Jason, per our discussion, it really fits the theme, because at first it feels like an outlier in that text, but when you think about it, he's really saying that the way he was treated, Jesus and John the Baptist, they were kind of the undesirables too.
well, yeah.
Because they're the outcasts, so the reason they were open to these other people is because they were also rejected. You say, what am I going to do with this generation? They won't listen, they reject.
That's why I brought up that's why I thought about that, the story of both my dog as it relates to Proverbs 7. Proverbs really those first 7 chapters all about having understanding and guarding your heart. And what's the famous verse in Proverbs? Was it 3:4 or 4:3?
I think it's 3.
Lean not on your own
I
understanding.
think it's 3.
3, 4. So, I mean, we tell that story, but we see that play out in the real life. His illustration from guarding yourself and using a story like that, it's just not wise. If you're pursuing something that's going to cost you other relationships or perhaps your life, it's not wise. And so when he said that about, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, here's a glutton and a drunkard, or, and John the Baptist, he kind of had the religious credibility, but he lived in the wilderness and he ate bugs. So this dude's crazy.
So I want to read these 2 passages that I didn't get to, Jase, because I think it sets up perfectly where we're headed next. And these are both out of Isaiah, and they were prophecies, but listen to it in context of Jesus talking about him and John the Baptist. First one is Isaiah 35:3. Strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. Your God will come. He will come with vengeance and with divine retribution. He will come to save you. Then the eyes of the blind will be open, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame will leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. So it's obviously a pointing towards Jesus coming, right? Yeah. But also John the Baptist. And then this was the other one, Isaiah 61, verse 1. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. Remember, that was the word Jesus used, the phrase Jesus used. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor.
So I mentioned this before, but all of these texts and all of the blessed are the poor, for yours is the kingdom. Blessed are you who hunger now, you'll be satisfied. Blessed are the ones who weep now for your life. Blessed are those who hate you. Blessed are them. Exclude you, insult you, reject your name. He's talking about the culture that these people were in, which hasn't changed enough to doodly squat.
Yeah.
It's the same culture with human beings.
Same mindset.
Same
sin problems.
Same sins. The whole thing is that he's talking about how you deal with it. Because if they get under your skin and you start sinning like they are and lash back out at them instead of just smiling and moving on, well, you're looking at it from the prism of I'm safe in my position in Christ.
Right.
And I'm a member of the kingdom of God, for crying out loud. I mean, he's come, he told me to go out and make disciples. So you can't go out and make disciples and be mean to people, and you're going to cost you a little bit. Some of them will rip you off. They'll lie to you, and you'll say, well, I tried to help them, but they just... So you've all kinds of people, but it's a description. Each one, all these texts, it's a description of what the kingdom looks like.
So you're right.
Without it, just think about what this place would look like without that. I mean, it's bad enough, and we all preach Jesus, him crucified and raised from the dead, and they're like, and they naysayers. But you just think about it. If there was no Jesus, no message of hope to live beyond the grave, just what you'd have there. You'd have nothing. So he's trying to say, look, You've got it. Just hold on to it.
So to your point, Isaiah wrote those words 700 years before Jesus is saying his words, and that's 2,000 years before us saying our words.
And we're still on the same train.
And they still matter. That's exactly right. And I think about that in verse 23, Jace, of chapter 7, whenever Jesus said, blessed is the man who does not fall away on account of me. You know, he was, and we obviously know we're talking about John the Baptist.
There's a lot of hurdles
Right.
in life.
So it's a reminder of encouragement to me.
It's a lot of people don't say it. They all say, "Well, go down here, and we've got a ministry that you can work." But training yourself with the help of God is really, you have to have it.
Yeah.
You have to have the training of yourself. Whether he's going to do it or they're going to do it or we're going to form a group that's going to call it this and that and the other, we tend to, and you know, we one serves all. But actually, self-training is what I keep reading about here. You know, blessed are you when they hate you, when they exclude you, they insult you, they reject your name as evil because of me. That's self-training.
Yeah.
No one can, if you say, well, I'll go to some people that, it's good to get together and all that, but we each have the obligation and the parameters of saying, train yourself to fulfill these texts. You'll have a lot better life.
Well, most of that can be done by living it. That's right.
You bet.
Well, I'm glad you brought up John the Baptist because, you know, we kind of talked about how it's even possible for him to doubt since he was part of this scheme of redemption and he was being used in a positive way as the forerunner of Jesus.
Sometimes we forget, Jace, he was only human.
Well, he is, and but I do want to make the point that when it gets to where we're at now with this Luke 8, there's something about how you listen and how you hear and being wise and what understanding and discernment and searching, these kind of qualities that after you read the parable of the sower, it really kind of scares you.
Yeah.
That he starts talking about how people are going to view this and receive it. And if you're on the wrong end of it, it's not a happy ending.
Yeah.
It's like my dog, if he keeps going across those streets in pursuit of something that he's not going to experience, it's just a venture that's not going to end well.
Yeah, it's futile.
And so I thought about that. You know, in the negative, yes, he was having doubts because his narrative of Jesus was not happening. And I think that's going to be a real clue to unpacking the parable of the sower, is that you don't want to have a vision of Jesus that is wrong, and you think it's right. So John the Baptist was thinking, he's going to crush all these other kingdoms and we're going to live happily ever after. But then he winds up in prison. But to the positive, he did say, well, are you the one? I mean, he had enough courage in that statement to realize his weakness, thinking, I'm misunderstanding. Something has happened that I can't figure out. And he was just point blank asking him.
He needed affirmation.
Did you get to chapter 8, which we're fixed to go into, from 5, 6, and 7, he talks about the sins being forgiven of a woman, and then your faith has saved you. About faith, go in peace. Then the sower, parable of the sower, he traveled about the town, village to village. It says proclaiming the good news, gospel of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, and also, so it comes back right to what I've been trying to get most people to kind of take a look at.
No, you're right about the kingdom.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you say he's preparing them for when this will be the norm. He's still standing there. He hasn't died yet. The resurrection hasn't taken place.
Well, to your point, in 6:20, when when Luke gave the version of the Sermon on the Mount, looking at his disciples, he said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God."
Yep.
So he's going around preaching about the kingdom.
He's trying to get them to see help is on the way here.
Well, in the next
and I'm it.
Jase, recently on a podcast, was it Proverbs 7 where you had that verse about the liver?
Yeah.
Because, most people don't think the liver is in the Bible, but it is in the Bible.
It is. I mean, it was in a deer hunting situation with an arrow, but it is interesting.
Solomon was saying, you better be careful. You'll get that arrow through the liver, right?
Yeah.
Well, Solomon was maybe wiser than ever because our folks at Liver Health Formula tell us that the liver is very important to take care of. The American Heart Association indicates that adults with fatty liver were 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than those that didn't have it. And it's about 100 million Americans is who it affects, including yours truly.
100 million?
100 million. That's almost a third of the country, Dad. It is an issue.
What did they say cause that?
It's just all kinds of issues, mostly being overweight, but there's other issues. But that liver gets fatty and it doesn't work as it's supposed to. But good news is, because I had my liver checked, my enzymes were super high, and I took this product that I'm about to tell you about from Liver Health Formula, and my numbers are back perfect. And so it does work. They also give you a free bottle of blood sugar formula that helps reduce the sugar cravings as well. So it worked for me. Definitely, if you've got some liver issues and your enzymes are high, check out this product, getliverhelp.com/unashamed. And you're going to get that bonus gift of the blood sugar formula as well. So it's getliverhelp.com/unashamed. Check it out.
In the next chapter, which is, kind of what we're leading to, is this. He makes this statement in Luke 9:27 when he said, "I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God."
Yep.
So he is revealing whatever that means. I mean, we know what it means, but the fun of studying these Gospels from beginning to end is you see.
You get to watch it happen.
Yeah, you're watching it unfold, and we get bogged down, in the trees a lot of times, and we're not seeing the forest. So that's why we keep trying to remind people that it wasn't like that Jesus didn't understand that people are going to have a hard time wrapping their head around this.
Yep.
And so he brings up using parables, because you think about how crazy this message is. I mean, you're living on the earth. Even though we have the Old Testament, like you read, and these predictions that there's a Messiah coming, but you're seeing that all the people who are familiar with those, they thought, he's coming, but he's going to do something different than what he actually did. So then they didn't recognize him, and a lot of people still haven't recognized him. So
to this day.
And to your point, John the Baptist, who couldn't have a closer front row seat.
It was his cousin.
And this thing had been predicted for hundreds of years. Even he questioned it because he had a different view, to Jase's point, of what this was going to look like.
And you got to remember, in real life, they're sitting around a campfire, because that's what they did back then. And he's like, look, you realize my parents, they could not have children. They were past the age of childbearing.
Yeah.
And I'm here. And then Jesus is like, yeah, that's cool. I get it. But, my parents.
I don't even have it.
They never, that had to have come up. They had a conversation about that. It's like, you're not really Tommy topping each other, because both were impossible without God, the creator of the universe, being directly involved in a manipulation of atoms and molecules occurring. And
that's it.
Genetic codes and laws of nature being violated. So, and they're having conversations about this. And then the man, we're not very far into Luke's account, and he's like, are you the one, or
should we look for another?
What am I missing? And so that's we're making a big deal about this is because how you think and how you view something matters. And that's really what he's getting into in Luke 8, the art of listening, which, look, for the first few years of my Christian life, I won't even get into pre-Jesus. I was not a very good listener. Because this flies in the face, really, of any kind of kingdom.
I was a terrible listener.
You say, what do kingdoms do? And we only have two categories of kingdoms. There's Jesus's, and then there's all other kingdoms. Well, all other kingdoms, they basically use force to occupy. And they tell you what you're going to do. You don't have to listen, really, as long as you comply. They just coerce you into, and even you see that even in the political world, you know, whatever side wins, that's it. You lost. You have to, even though
they start making the rules. This is how we're going to function.
Yep.
And so then to make an example, an illustration out of that, so if you don't think how you listen matters, you just use the political illustration. So whatever side of politics you are, any news that comes out, you basically either, if it's something positive, you shout about it, you know. If it's something negative, you spin it. And no matter what comes out, it doesn't matter what really happened, because you've picked a side and you filter everything. How you listen to things is showing you which side you're on.
The side, whether it be error or not.
Yeah, forget about who's right or wrong. I'm just saying how you listen to things is coming from where you've set yourself on what side. That's true. Which is true. Whether you're on the right side or the wrong side, or, you know, doesn't matter. My point is how you listen, because we all know we're like that. If it's something that your side...
Jase, you could be wrong, but I actually doubt it.
No, I'm not wrong on this. It's like if something that hurts whatever party you're with comes out, you know, you're like, I bet that didn't even happen, you know. Yeah. But if it's something positive, I was trying to think of something.
I got
I got one. They found cocaine in the White House.
Yeah.
Was that the one you were going to use?
No, I got another one.
Oh, well, that to me, that was enough.
Well, I am absolutely, if they found cocaine
you didn't know that?
I'm just shocked to even hear it. No, I don't.
Well, I was shocked that somebody reported it. I thought, I was like, well, how does that happen?
I was just assumed it.
So
now I was going to use my own example. So, I mean, I proudly supported John McCain, who's the one from Utah, Romney. I mean, I touted him. I supported him. I voted for him for president. And a few years go by, and you learn more about him. And I'm like, to your point, Jase, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, but it turns out these guys didn't believe like I believed at all.
If you're on the wrong side,
I was on their side, but then it turns out I should have never. So I'm embarrassed I ever voted for either one of them.
Well, I was convicted when I read this.
At least McCain was a war hero, so I can tip my hat for that.
I was convicted when I read the parable of the sower, and I really think the first three verses, which are not about the parable of the sower, which we need to address, but when I read it, it's very convicting, because you realize, and I've said this before, and I know people got mad, but the older you get, the less likely you're going to listen. Like the people I run with now in my age bracket, they're not listening. And so it scares me, because I'm like, and you say listening about what? Anything.
Now, I'm going to read this. I want to
Any subject.
I know this is where you're going, but I want to read it just to set it for the audience, because I'm really glad that we're giving the big flyover, because he closes out this section of the two parables we're going to talk about in 8:18. I'm sorry. Therefore, consider carefully how you listen.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
I knew you were. So
that's a story. Where it says that, where's that at again?
That was in the story is 16 to 18.
Yeah, and
18's how he wraps it.
And look, Al, you're right. The parable of the sower, you know, it says it's about hearing. You know, I think the King James, whatever it said, be careful how you hear.
Yeah.
And you're like, be careful how I hear? what does that mean? Why would Jesus be saying, "Now look," and he's making a
May
big
be
deal
bunch
about
of, maybe a bunch of crap, but you believe it.
But that's the Greek word, crap.
But you're right in the 16 through 18, which we'll eventually get to. Most people think, well, this is always about sharing your faith, because it says no one lights a lamp, hides it in a jar, or puts it under a bed. Because we're all thinking, oh, we're supposed to let our light shine. We're supposed to be bold.
Most time
and
you hear
courageous.
this preached, that's what.
This is not the context. That's not his point here.
That's right.
Because the point is in verse 17, it says, "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Therefore, consider carefully how you listen."
That's right.
So it's like if you've got this, you're going to put a bowl over your life and say, "Oh, I got something going here. I got it all figured out." And he's like, it's all going to be revealed. Your thoughts. This is getting down into what's ticking in your brain. And it also brings in the idea of the spiritual war we have with the evil one. They use thoughts also, because that first heart where the seed never got into the ground, it fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Well, who are the birds? Because the seeds are the soil is where all the people
Your
lie.
neighbors, your kinfolks, this one and that one. And
Well, I think people are the soul, because that's the hearts.
Right.
But the birds coming in is someone who is not your friend. It's not a human being. It's the spiritual forces of evil. I mean, I think everybody agrees with that. But what I wanted to say earlier that I didn't is I think the reason Jesus told this parable, because people immediately think, well, why is he telling this story, and what is a parable? You've heard it defined different ways: earthly story with a heavenly meaning, or
illustrative teachings method, meaning that you take something from nature and apply meaning to it, right?
Yeah. And look, I'll tell you this, as much time as I've spent reading this in the last couple of days, I noticed, even coming down here, you look at a cornfield differently after you've meditated on this for a while, or just a field that's got a bunch of weeds and briars, and because you're looking at that, realizing, staring at that is where Jesus got this idea.
Yeah.
And which is very powerful, because when you just think, we take for granted the actual germination process and things changing bodies and changing forms and producing other seeds that produces other crops. We're taking that for granted.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Just eating corn on the cob is like, what a miracle. This came out of the ground from one seed. All it did was take some time. So he's comparing that to our hearts and how we listen and approach the message that we're hearing. So that's why when we started off, when he said he's proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God, you got to remember this is hard to wrap your head around, because the message that he's bringing is crazy. This is a crazy message. Mm-hmm. Here's a king who's not into agriculture or a farmer. So I'm sure the people, it was a large crowd too. They're like, what do you know about farming? Aren't you a
Carpenter
hanging out with fishermen?
Yeah.
And so he starts pontificating on agriculture. And of course, we know why, because that's why I brought up that illustration. If you're the creator,
it was his idea.
Yeah, he's the creator of the universe, is why he's pontificating on agriculture, because he designed that. And if you really think about it, it is a phenomenon that no one can explain.
Because it's funny, because on the scientific side, we come along now and put big words on stuff and say, look how smart we are. We figured out photosynthesis, and we have all these words we'll attach.
Even the term Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Who is that? Every time I make this, there's 2 emails that come in. They're like, I can't believe you're downing Mother Nature. It's a word that humans made up. That there is no person. It's like Santa Claus, I mean, we don't know what to call it. So if you don't believe in God, you say, well, I believe in Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. That's just, I don't know what to say about that. It's just we made something up so we could identify it.
And there's a picture of her on every Starbucks. Mother Nature, there she is.
There she is. So somebody built this, somebody made this, and Jesus, by him commenting on this, seems to have some kind of insight. But think about how crazy the end of it is. He's like, all right, I'm from heaven, I'm a king, and I'm going to be tortured and crucified so that you can be victorious. It's just crickets. Just think about that. Just take what you know out of the scheme of redemption in God's plan. People are like, what? That's why I think he's going into detail about how you listen.
Yep.
Because then when he come back from the dead, though, all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe there is something to this. Because if you could come back from the dead, that changes a lot. But then when he starts talking about what the kingdom is like, well, everything is backwards. Everything's upside down. You know, if you want to be powerful, you humble yourself. You want to be rich, sell all your money. Sell all you have and give away all your money. You're like, wait, what? It's hard for you to be open-minded enough to even consider what he's introducing here. I mean, that's my theory on why he's using parables, why he's using parables, that the meaning is be real careful on how you listen and how you're hearing in life message. So what I was going to make the point, though, is it's the exact opposite of every other kind of kingdom. Because every other kingdom, they come up with, here's the manifesto, here's what we're going to do, and it's all about, the strongest person wins. We're going to whoop everybody. We got the greatest weapons. And so it's crazy. It's like...
if somebody tells you your father is the ocean, salt water is the
giver of life.
Yeah, the giver of life. That's where you got your life from. You along with an elephant and a giraffe and a monkey, all of them, a whale. That's your father. That's why you say you better be careful how you listen, because you say, but
no, that's true.
It seems nonsensical. You said, what? You pick up some salt water, you're like. So that's where I came from.
You got to be really.
That's where you came from.
And you got to realize the older you get, the harder it is for you to listen.
Yeah.
It's just harder for you to be open to anything.
Oh, that's right.
I'm talking about any human.
And you're right. And if you let's take our last break.
I think a good illustration, though, is like you're kind of fooled into thinking what true power is. Because think about it. So if you had a field, we're fixed to get to this, but if you had a field and you had 10 dump trucks filled with dynamite, or you had 10 dump trucks filled with seeds, and you say, well, which is the more powerful? Well, you would think the dynamite, because you're like, you go out there and blow this field to bits. But it would only be a one-time thing. If you put those seeds in the ground, and then this crop comes up and dies, but guess what happens? More seeds come from the ones that were there. When you're just looking at power.
Oh, you talking about, and I wonder how salt water makes its headway right there.
What I'm describing is the two heartbeats of the kingdoms. You have one where it's all a temporary force. We're blowing everything up. We're in control. But when you look at really what Jesus introduced as being the creator of the universe, what just a plant does and produces and reproduces is a way more powerful concept.
But very much so.
It actually... He was sowing the seed for us that it's possible to come back from the dead. because you see it in a plant.
That's right. And because that what you look at and assume is dead is really not dead. There's still life there because you put it back in the ground, you start the process over. Dad, you described something. So you did these bass ponds over here on our property. And I remember when you first did all that, it's flat ground. There's nothing growing. There's nothing there.
Just weeds.
Just weeds. And then all of a sudden, some birds start flying in and landing on the shore of this water. And what we didn't realize was they were bringing seeds with them.
Yep.
That they'd gotten from other places like that. And now you walk over there and there's big willow trees all
30, 40 feet tall.
Exactly. All the sower was the birds that came in from some other place.
And it came from their feet.
From their feet.
And I had nothing to do. I didn't plant anything. I just looked up.
And it's a forest now.
It's a forest.
It's a forest. I said, whoa. I told the Corps of Engineers, I said, you see this right here? What good? Because I had to have permission to dig a hole in the ground. Mm-hmm. So I pointed to them. I said, what does that look like to y'all? They said, just a field of weeds. I said, do you see any merit, any goodness in that? They said, not really. I said, well, what if you placed some levees to where this would hold water and come back in another few years and take a look at it? Well, now it's at that stage.
It's beautiful.
About 10 years ago. So they go out there and look now, they're like, goodness gracious, how'd you do that? I said, I didn't do it.
And that's to your point.
The birds did it.
Got out of the way.
And they're like, get out of here. I said, well, I'm just telling you.
Well, I wanna read this.
I didn't plant the willow seeds. What's a willow seed look like?
I mean, I think we've kind of introduced it, and I think it does go into what Al said, just from a context situation about from this how John the Baptist and Jesus were viewed.
Yes.
Because there's a wisdom. You think about making wise decisions. I mean, how important is it in your life to making wise decisions?
Yeah.
I would say that better be in your top 5. From a lifetime viewpoint, making wise decisions is essential.
Oh.
And so,
especially for the big things.
So I'm going to back up because, and Phil and I had the same thought. That first verse where he's talking about when he's proclaiming the good news of the kingdom.
It's going one town to the next, 1 to 1.
Yeah. And so, but this news is what I was trying to illustrate is crazy. It's crazy to the religious people. It's crazy to the Gentile world because they're like, oh, we can come too? I mean, because he seems to be, he's claiming to be Son of God. He's claiming that he can forgive sins. And he seems to be going to every class of human being. Whatever humans have made the differences, he seems to be saying.
Rich, poor, all in between.
Military, across country lines, male and female. And then I think it's very powerful. And these next 2 verses are skipped over. But I want to highlight them because a lot of people who look at Christianity as they just quickly dismiss it, which would be the first heart that we're going to get to, by the way.
Right.
It's not even a chance. It's like I'm not interested. They accuse Jesus, of being or Christianity like demeaning towards women or whatever, and everything we've read up until right now has been the total opposite. He's valuing women in a way in their culture that wasn't happening.
Right.
He's taking risk on who he's talking to in public, having the woman let her hair down, which we went through that a couple podcasts ago. Well, that's why these religious people are like, well, you're not the Son of God, because this woman, if you knew who she was, and she's being a public disgrace right now, and you're going along with it. You're saying to be supporting there. Well, look right here. So it says in verse 2, and also some women who had been, so here's the 12. So Jesus is going around preaching the good news. The 12 were with him, the 12 apostles, and also some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had come out.
That's a lot.
Well, yeah. Joanna, the wife of Chuza, the manager of Herod's household, which was just those first 2 that he mentions cannot be any different.
Yeah.
You have a powerful woman, and you have a woman from the wrong town who's had this, demonic experience, and then you have Susanna.
And they are all together coming out.
Yeah, and many
and helping with their own means, but they didn't have a lot. I mean,
which is the direct opposite of what people view Christianity when you get to Ephesians 5 and the roles of that we're male and we're female and the husband's role and the wife's role.
Women were the backbone of this operation.
Well, yeah, and they're like, oh, y'all are just like keep them whatever the saying they have, keep them at home, and they have a stereotype of
barefoot and pregnant.
And here you're reading this and you're like, this is the beginning. The birth pains of the kingdom of God, the Holy Spirit being unleashed on the planet.
That's
and
it.
He's traveling around with 12 apostles and a bunch of women from every conceivable background, from powerful, influential to widows to single women, which is
preach on, Jace. Preach on.
Look, in their culture was breaking the law.
Yeah.
These amendments to the law. You can't be going around in public with a bunch of guys. No. And they're doing it, and Jesus seems to be supporting it. And they're making all the money.
That's right.
To fund the thing.
And look, and the whole time, primarily male people, male men, and all the time, look, Jace, they're scratching their head saying, now, who is this? They're seeing
you can understand why it was viewed the way it was, for sure. So we're out of time. We'll talk a little bit more about this setup. About that, Jason, in our overtime segment. So if you want to follow us over there, it's blazetv.com/unashamed is where you sign up for overtime. We'll set the stage a little more before we get into the meat of this Luke 8.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.